I bring you bad news. The former president has been diagnosed with late-stage prostate cancer, and the dam has broken open regarding the media cover-up on his cognitive decline while he was in office. Isaiah once lamented that in his day, truth was cast into the streets. And today we're seeing the exact same thing happen in America. It's time we wake up, and we've got details on this episode of The Deep End on Tim Hatch Live. Welcome in, everybody, whenever you're watching this video. This is The Deep End on Tim Hatch Live. And if you are on YouTube, consider giving us a like, a subscribe, and clicking the notification bell. Get notified every time we go live. On The Deep End, we discuss the news of the day from a pastoral worldview. And I begin today with an old tale from a very famous Danish author named Hans Christian Andersen. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's called The Emperor's New Clothes. And The Emperor's New Clothes is one of many stories that we still tell ourselves and share and reproduce in movies and other popular media from Hans Christian Andersen, a brilliant storyteller. He gave us stories like The Ugly Duckling, Thumbelina, The Princess and the Pea, and most notably for this moment, and The Little Mermaid, but most notably for this moment, The Emperor's New Clothes, a tale of deception, vanity, and the power of truth-telling. In this story, a vain emperor is tricked into parading naked down a street while his court and subjects pretend to see magnificent attire upon him, until a simple child dares to speak the obvious. But what happens when this timeless fable mirrors real-world politics? This is the post-Biden presidency problem that we are running into. Yes, the former president, this past week it was released, BBC here reporting, former U.S. President Joe Biden, 82 years old, has been diagnosed with prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. A statement from his office said on Sunday. The discovery was made on Friday after he reported urinary symptoms. The cancer is a more aggressive form of the disease, and Biden and his family are reviewing treatment options. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer characterized by a Gleason score of 9, grade group 5 with metastasis to the bone. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. So this is what we now know about Biden, but here's the question that I have for you. Would we have heard about this if he were still president? And you say, of course we would. Not so fast. Because this kind of late-stage cancer usually, and I mean really usually, is caught far more earlier than it has in the case of the 46th president. And you might remember this gaffe, one of many, from President Biden in 2022, the summer of 2022, when he was making a statement and said the following about having cancer himself, and the White House told us it was a mistake.
And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer.
That's why I and so many other blank people have cancer. An interesting gaffe from the president back in 2022. In their official statement from his office, they do say it has metastasized. That's important to note because it takes a long time for cancer in any organ to get into the bone. We can know how long this process takes through scientific discovery. And so now, even left-wing political pundits on MSNBC are asking doctors, hey, shouldn't we have known about this far more in advance? Here is Joe Scarborough of MSNBC, somebody who once called Joe Biden the best version of himself as recently as last year, having a conversation with a doctor about this type of cancer diagnosis and why he didn't get screened and see this PSA number, the alarming number that you find out reveals prostate cancer earlier than now. Watch.
Did they do a digital rectal exam to assess his prostate? Again, typically that's done in the presence of symptoms. To your point, he's the leader of the free world. Did they do it and not characterize it? It's hard to know. We're speculating here. I would say in an abundance of caution, probably if you holistic and comprehensive, that would make sense. It is interesting to note that President Trump's, President Obama's, and President Bush II, in their most recent physicals, in their terms of office, obviously 2025 for President Trump, did comment on their PSA levels. And so they got screened while in office and they commented on it. It's not easy to access the most recent ones from President Biden. You can read summary articles. I couldn't access it on the archive site on the White House just before I came on. But according to those that were able to, there is not a report of a PSA test on the most recent physical that was read out for President Biden's last year in office. And so it's to say what was done, what was not done. You and I would be speculating, but the other three most recent occupants of the White House had it drawn, and it was reported out in the case of President.
So that's kind of alarming when you have a break of healthcare president, or at least health screening president for the sitting president. You get screened for this after age 40, sometimes age 50, especially if you have a history of it in your family. We don't know if Biden does, but why weren't Biden's numbers reported? Why wasn't he screened? Why didn't the doctor care to concern himself with such matters? My father had prostate cancer, still struggling with it in some ways. He has had tons of PSA tests every year to find out where he is on that level. This is a serious disease. You got to be careful. You got to fight it, and you can catch it early if you get screened enough. Here is oncologist Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel stating the fact that very few men get diagnosed with cancer at this late of a stage. It's usually caught much earlier. Watch what he says.
Prostate cancer that's spread to the bone. What's the prognosis?
Well, first of all, I want to express my sympathy, and I hope Joe responds to treatment, President Biden, very well. The fact is that very few people get diagnosed this advanced. About 7% of all prostate cancer in the country gets diagnosed when you have a lesion that's in the bone, and therefore it's metastatic and incurable. The prostate cancer will not go away. He will have it. That doesn't mean he's going to die from it, because there are a lot of treatments. There's androgen blockade.
Okay, so that's what he starts with. Very, very few people are diagnosed at this stage of metastasis in the case of prostate cancer, 7%, in fact. When you're the president of the United States, leader of the free world, maybe, just maybe, the doctors are extra careful with regards to your health and cancer screenings, but evidently not in the case of Joe Biden, who gave every possible sign that he was not at tip-top shape while he was in office. Later, Ezekiel Emanuel admits the following, that he was surprised by the fact that this cancer wasn't discovered earlier. Watch.
Oh, he's had this for many years, maybe even a decade, growing there and spreading. That's right. It's a little surprising. I look back at the records, and there's no evidence that when he got his health status and the medical records were released, that he had a prostate-specific antigen.
So that's incredible for the doctor himself to even suggest that this cancer would have been in his body for over a decade, and just now, we're hearing about it. Just now, they decide to report on the fact that Biden has this very severe late-stage form of cancer. There's an article on this over on Yahoo.com. Amazingly, Yahoo.com reporting facts suddenly. Morning Joe stunned as oncologist says Biden had cancer for years. The expert opinion of Emanuel, who also served as an advisor in the Obama administration and was on Biden's COVID-19 advisory board when he was president, indicates that either Biden's medical evaluations weren't as thorough as they could have been, or that the former president kept this information hidden from the public. And I would dare to suggest it wasn't the president keeping it from the public. It was his handlers. We have doctor after doctor going on the news interview circle right now and telling everybody the same thing. This diagnosis should have been found far sooner, and the fact that it hasn't been found sooner suggests nefarious practices on the part of Biden's handlers. A simple search on Grok, the AI agent on X, it is unlikely for prostate cancer to progress from a healthy diagnosis in July 2024, which would have been Biden's last physical checkup, to advance to bone metastasis by May 2025, as the disease takes usually 3 years to reach that stage. Takes years to reach that stage, even in aggressive cases. Medical literature suggests 5 to 15 years for metastasis, with rare high Gleason cancers possibly spreading in 1 to 3 years if undetected. Regular screenings, especially for high-profile individuals, should catch issues earlier. No evidence supports a July 2024 healthy diagnosis for Biden. His last report was February 2024, declaring him fit Such rapid progression in 10 months is rare and raises questions about prior screenings or reporting accuracy. And that is the power of AI. And that is the power of X. Friends, if we didn't have X purchased by one Elon Musk, the narrative that was foisted upon the American populace up until, June of 2022 would still be largely unchallenged because the conversation was limited, people were censored, and there was a prevailing government censorship program underway. So, friends, the emperor had no clothes. Or in the case of Joe Biden, the president had diminished capacity, not just physically, but mentally. And that brings me to the news of the release on AXIOS.com of the Robert Hur interview tapes between him and Biden when he was interviewed by Robert Hur, a special counsel to interview him regarding his holdings of classified documents. And the tapes have been released with Biden's voice on them. I encourage you to take a listen for yourself. He had difficulty remembering dates, when he was in office, when his own son died. Frequently, he changed the subject mid-sentence and offered many other mistaken gaffes along the way. It is damaging to the reputation of President Biden and those who were closest to him. Then we have the recent appearances of Joe Biden of himself on talk shows such as The View, which have done nothing to change the narrative. He is cognitively declined, and anyone with a low IQ can see it from a mile away. Meanwhile, we have to revisit that what they said while he was president was completely different. The narrative campaign, the machine that thought that they would always have power in perpetuity because they had a complicit media on their side, could not do more to try to convince us that Joe Biden was absolutely tip-top shape, healthy, astute, sharp, and better than ever. Watch this montage.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detailed.
The Democrats have a serious problem on their hands. They have lost every shred of credibility that they had up until now. As a Christian, regardless of your political affiliation, you should hate lies. You should hate mistruths, right? You should hate cooperation and corruption from the media with regards to the highest office in your government. Here is the tip of the spear in regards to media narrative and lies on behalf of the Biden regime. Joe Scarborough on MSNBC, who interviewing doctors now about how this cancer diagnosis must be off because they didn't screen him or they lied about screenings. This was him a year ago during the campaign. He was the best ever. Watch.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
It's unbelievable. The emperor has no clothes, and someone needed to say it. And thank God we can now finally state the obvious, and that is we were lied to for 4 stinking years, and even far before then, because the deep state was real, the media narrative was real, the journalistic integrity of ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and even Fox News is out the window. And it's time to state the truth. Now, Democratic leaders are trying to regain a vestige of integrity with going on talk show circuits and detailing how they did, in fact, drop the ball regarding Biden's capacity. Here is Senator Chris Murphy saying we made a mistake. Watch.
Is this audio proof that President Biden shouldn't have run for re-election?
Well, I don't know that that's a particularly fair excerpt. That's a very emotional topic for the president. But obviously, in retrospect, the president should have gotten out of the race earlier. There's no doubt that the Democratic Party would have been better served by having the ability to have an open primary. Kamala Harris probably would have done very well in that process. But in retrospect, we lost. And so I don't think you can defend the way in which our politics politics played out. I mean,
by the way, this was Senator Chris Murphy while Biden was still campaigning. Watch.
Listen, I think the president is an incredibly compelling figure, and I would hope that the White House will send him out all over the country to just be who he is, right? He comes across as Scranton Joe Biden when he is engaging with voters, and I hope he does more of that. I think he will.
Okay, so that's the take of someone like Chris Murphy, who needs to try to regain confidence from the American voter. We'll see if he does succeed in doing so. I want to share with you that very video where Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, was committed to fighting for Joe Biden's reelection even up to February of 2024. Here he is. Watch.
And I would say to folks who are worried about the numbers, stop worrying and start worrying. And I'm going to do everything in my political power over the course of the next several months to make the case, to prosecute the case against Donald Trump, to make the case about how Joe Biden is the candidate standing up for our freedom.
Okay, so that is how they lie to you, and now they have to run for president. And Gretchen Whitmer, you say, here she was after the disastrous debate a year ago with Donald Trump, saying that he was still ready to go and we need to get behind him. Watch.
I think it's important to recognize the debate did not go well, right? I think we all understand that. Yeah. What we've seen from this president since then, though, is an aggressive calendar. I went to Washington, D.C. with a number of my colleagues. We sat with them days after the debate, got a chance to see him. I spoke with him last Saturday with all of the co-chairs of the campaign. I mean, he is in it, and he is going to fight like hell to make sure that we continue the work that he has begun in this first term.
Okay, so that's what she said while she was working with Biden to make sure he got reelected. But here she is now, May 15th. Friends, just 4 days ago, claiming that she was simply too busy to notice that he wasn't cognitively able to run for reelection. And I remind you, she was the co-chair of his campaign for president. Here's what she says.
Another topic, and that is my colleague's book with Alex Thompson on President Biden's physical and cognitive decline during his time in the White House. You were a co-chair of the Biden-Harris campaign. You stuck with Biden until he dropped out of the race. Given your position in the campaign, what signs of decline did you notice?
You know, I've not read the book. I can tell you this, that as the book reports, cabinet members didn't have access. That tells you that, as a governor at a state, halfway across the country who was working her tail off, 160 stops on a bus tour that I headlined through swing states. I was busy working. I was busy doing the connection and the voter registration. And so
you didn't see signs of decline
to that directly.
You didn't see signs of decline. You can't speak to that directly while you worked hand in hand with the declining president in trying to reelect him. Remember this when that same woman tries to tell you that she has a vision for the future of this country in about, 16 months from now as she runs for president. Why this matters is because my question is simply this. What else do they lie about? This is the Democrat Party. Over the course of my life, why I can't vote for them. This is the party that tells you that climate change is a real thing and the world will end in 12 years until it doesn't, and then they got to extend it another 12 years. This is the party that tells you that two dads can make a family. This is the party that tells you that it's just a clump of cells in the mother's womb. This is the party that tells you that men and girls sports is progress. This is the party that told you to get vaccines, and if you didn't get a vaccine, you were a danger to everybody around you, and you need to mask up and jab up or else you're going to kill grandma, and how dare you step out of your house. Don't take pleasure in freedom. We are here to control every part of your life. This is the party whose narrative is falling apart. And I, for one, am very glad to see it happening because the emperor had no clothes. He had no cognitive ability and he needed to be replaced. And thankfully, I think we have a very, very able man in the White House right now. Like him or hate him, he is able to at least do the job. That's the free content, and I hope you consider subscribing for the extra content, which will be released on Tuesday, the latest. And for $10 a month, you can get access to that immediately. And there are also other membership levels for extra bonus benefits, like a new shirt that is coming out, and we are giving to all of our premium members. So be on the lookout for that. If you're a premium member, it's coming to your mailbox very soon. Check us out at patreon.com/Tim Hatch Live. When you support us, we support Project Rescue and the American Bible Society. But that is it for today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for watching.